Okay. So step 3, gets where it gets more fun and exercisey, which is we're going to look at doing a conversation mapping exercise. So conversation mapping helps you get inside the customer experience, and it's a role-playing exercise, a hypothetical conversation with an imaginary user. So you can explore in a conversation some or all of the following. So it includes what the customer is looking for or what their goal or need is, why they've come to the website, how much they understand about the topic, products or services, and how they talk, what words they use, what tone, and what voice. So a conversation mapping can help you gain empathy for the customer's experience, even if you're not talking to an actual customer. Like at work, we do sometimes, and Jen Kellerman can speak to this, we talk to each other and we'll talk to people on different teams and have them walk through an experience and ask them questions that help us gain insight into what's going on, how they're experiencing a page that we're working on. Then it can outline edge cases or things people could be looking for, wanting that we're not having on the page. So it can help us better understand their needs and learn how to speak their language, which is really important. What words do people use to describe certain things? And then we can create a user experience that's more informed by the customer's point of view. So here's an example. You first need to identify the traits of the user you're conducting your imaginary interview with. In the example here, the user was a private residential customer looking to purchase a fence. And I will give you folks a minute to read through the customer experience, and I put gates and fences and then the customer and what it flows through the conversation. And this is just a conversation between two people who aren't particularly users, but just what could come out of something as simple as that. So take a look at that for a sec. Okay. So what do we get from this? What were the takeaways? The customer wanted to specify features such as dog fence. The customer wanted to know about extra services such as tree removal, and they wanted to know about financing. So those were some of the things that weren't covered on the page that we learned from doing this like super simple 5-minute exercise, maybe more than 5 minutes. And this is something that's really useful. You can do it with real users, which is great. And if not, before you start a project at work, you can do guerrilla testing. You can do this with anybody. You can talk to your mother. You can talk to a friend. You can talk to another person at work on another team, someone who's not familiar with what you're doing, but who has insight and clarity. And it's great to talk with people who aren't like super users too. Anybody have questions on conversation mapping? Has anybody used this before? Okay. So tell the story with content maps. So based on the conversation map that we just did and what you know about the business goals, how can you lead customers through an experience that helps us all achieve our goals? Identify the customer need at each step of a user journey. For example, purchasing a remote control at gates and fences. So tell the story with content maps. So you want to identify a few things in this experience of telling the story with a content map. What does the
Oh, hey,
customer want? Yeah,
Sarah.
yeah.
Oh, do you mind if I go back 2 slides? Michelle Min had a really interesting question.
Oh,
She
yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
know
Let me hear.
if, yeah. So she wanted to, actually, Michelle, do you want to ask it?
Up here.
Sure, yeah, hi.
Hi,
In fact,
Michelle.
I'll start my video. Hi, my question was, should conversation mapping be based on user personas that we create based on research that we've done? So does, developing a user persona come first, or can, like, I think in the example that you provided, it seems like it could be anybody. So I just wanted to kind of confirm with you that it could be an imaginary conversation with anyone.
No, that's a great question. And, when you have like an official user research, there would be personas, and you would try and find people in your customer group that fit those personas and do this exercise with them. If you have personas, you can use them when you're doing sort of guerrilla testing and have the customer person who's playing pretend be as if they're one of the personas. And a lot of times though, we just do the guerrilla testing without that. And we get a lot of interesting information. And we did an exercise with our team at CVS, and it yielded some interesting results for us in terms of finding things people might be looking for on a page that weren't there, or things they wanted to do that couldn't do. We used someone it was fun. It was someone who was a super shopper, and it was on the retail part of CVS. So she really was good at sort of fleshing out things a super shopper might look for. And we learned a lot from that experience.
Sarah, it sounds
And
like
just
you're
kind of,
saying that the ideal is to do formal research and find an actual user that matches your model.
Yeah, exactly. A user that matches your persona. So that's the official way we did that at TIA. We had like an official user research group. And one of the things that I wanted to bring with me to CVS was to use this, like, how can we just use this in half an hour on the ground to gain insight into something we're working on? Like, so I kind of, we did it the official user research way at TIA, and then I brought over sort of this idea of a guerrilla test. And we did this at TIA as well. And it really, if you've got a sketch with words on it, or if you're just looking for someone, I mean, it's all about conversation. We're writing content, so we're all about creating a conversation with a user. So the idea of inventing conversations and playing around and exploring and get people who can push the edges a little bit can be useful. So to your point, like ideally, yes, you would have the bandwidth to do real personas and real interviews. And if you don't, and you're working on something and you're feeling like maybe I'm missing something, you can pull someone aside and just run through something like this. And I think we spent like 15 minutes on the Care Pass section of CVS. And we gained a lot of insights through this.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you. So we were talking about the conversation map. And we want to talk about what the customer wants and the steps to help them get what they want, and what are the possible pain points, such as poor search capabilities, not enough product information, hard to navigate checkout process. So just to illustrate what this would look like a little map. And, this is a very simplified version for a short talk. But we looked at LL Bean, and the example was that someone wanted to search for a woman's flannel shirt. So we included the customer need, the story point, which would be to provide a search feature in menu browse, and the desired outcome of that story point. And we went through each action that they would want to do. They want product details, what size, I want to buy the product, I want to check out. And by sketching through this, it sort of set us up to do a real exercise. And the real exercise was on gates and fences, the website. And I'll let you folks read through this. You don't need to hear me. But you might notice how it brings out some interesting points. And it creates a little map for a customer journey, a customer experience. Does anyone have any questions?
We do have a question from Christina. Do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask it?
Hi,
Sure.
Christine.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can elaborate a bit more on the story point. How do you create those? What do you think to actually know that you have the story correctly?
Right. So I want to look for remote control for my gate. So the story point, I wish I could think of a better phrase for that. We're all content strategists. You'd think I could have a better phrase. But anyway, we can work on that later. So the idea, it's just an idea. The story point is an idea for an action we can take to help meet the customer need. So the team was thinking, I want to look for remote control for my gate. So what if we provide a landing page that displays available inventory? And the desired outcome is, that they'd view them. And then this customer need, I need to know the details of each product and model numbers and tech specs. So as a story point, we thought we need to show these things in images in a consistent structure. And one of the problems with the existing site was there was no consistent structure. Another idea was people want to see their specific things that they need, and the idea of how we could solve that. The story point is sort of the solve for the need. We would provide filtering to help people narrow down what they're looking for. And then we have sort of a checkout process. So I would say the story point is like the solve that we came up with to meet the customer need. And the desired outcome, which is something you can measure against, is do they view the details? Do they browse a selection? Do they add to the cart? Does that make sense, Christina?
It does. Thank you so much. And then just I was taking notes and then I missed the last part on the metrics. So you say that basically is it's the action we can take to meet the customer need and the solution we come up, right, to meet this need. And then you mentioned something about the metrics.
I don't think I did.
How you measure. Sorry, I was taking notes.
Oh, the desired outcome is sort of how you can measure against that. So if your idea is like in row 4, you want people to add the object they're looking for to a cart. If they don't add it to a cart, you can go back and say, well, maybe number 3, where I provided this filter option, wasn't a good solve. Or you can go back, and it gives you a point of to evaluate how are you meeting your desired outcomes? And if not, you can go back through your story points and figure out where you maybe didn't do what the user needed or where you could improve the solve.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. Sorry, I kept my camera off.
Oh, that's okay. Does anybody else have a question? Okay. So the next step is to sketch a page with draft content using only what we've learned through the inventory, the audit, the conversation map, and the content map. So with just that amount of information, you can dig into a sketch. So the content should be scannable with plenty of headings and subheadings. Important information always comes first. Short paragraphs and sentences, no unnecessary words, bullet points and lists. These are my basic UX writing tidbits written for the audience. No jargon and no passive tense, no redundancies. So this was the page that was the remote control page that we were looking at. So the problems on the page were that the products appear to be grouped by brand, but don't have any additional grouping. The page copy is included between groups of products, and it alternates between product description, brand information, and customer service information. So it's kind of all over the place. And then the CTAs vary between buy it now and hyperlinks added to the cart. I'm sorry to laugh, it just cracks me up. So we're trying to solve these problems on the page, and the solutions that the team came up with were to focus on the core messaging. We carry a large selection of remote controls, and here's a filtering system to use. So it's totally scannable. Your mind doesn't go blurry looking at all the text. It's very scannable. No redundancies on the page. The technical information is moved to pages below. So once you see something and you get the basics, you can dig in for more details. And then tooltips provide additional support. Oops, sorry, back. So by using the conversation map and the content map, which, you know, talked about filtering and talked about making things more scannable, we were able to get to this sketch. Now, some of it is because we have a more contemporary mental model for how things get done. And if you were to work someplace like CVS or Meta or Microsoft or Amazon, there are prototype experiences. But this gives you something to show that has words on it and makes sense and solves for some of the major problems on the page. This is something you can do with a UX designer or take to a UX designer as like a starting point for collaboration. And then it gets fun testing and iterating. So now that you have a sketch, you can do some user research or usability studies. And you can do those both formally and informally, like before, like with the research using personas, or do you use Joe and the next team over? So before you take your sketches to the real world, you want to run them by people you work with or folks at home, or do real user research where you write a script and bring in actual users and test your initial sketches with the idea that it is a prototype. So you can create a list of scenarios for users that will illuminate pain points in your content. If the user doesn't understand, ask how they would explain it. This can reveal language choices, knowledge and reading levels, and tone. And we can get a lot of information from users, whether it's formal or informal, and it can help us find immediately find the pain points or places where we're off, where things aren't working the way we thought they would. And using real users is a wonderful way to go. So you want to ask specific questions to direct the user's attention, because they'll be looking all over the page. So we want to ask, what are you seeing overall, to get an impression of the page? How likely are you to read the page on a scale of 1 to 10? And you can think about the two examples, the one from Gates and Fences that was a lot of content, and then the one that came from the sketch after doing the exercises. And then what would you do next on the page? What action would they take? And is there anything missing from the page? These are just some basic questions to get the mental ball rolling in your head. So this was the testing that Aaron did for gates and fences. What are you seeing overall? And he did this for the initial, he did this for the initial gates and fences. I don't have his copy for the final one, but you can see that it was dense information, unclear headings. I'll let you look through this. Unlikely that they would read the page. What's missing. You know, and then ideally you would do one for your sketch. Does anyone have any questions or experiences they want to share about this? Does anybody use sort of user testing in a prototype or this type of guerrilla testing? So the final step is to get sign off from stakeholders like product, business, legal, and marketing. And typically you would get all of these people involved early so they would see the iterations. But the most important thing here is that you've gone through a process that helps you create a strong rationale for presenting to stakeholders. They can say, well, we would rather you did it this way. And you can say, well, testing with these XYZ users showed us that it was perceived like this. Business might say we wanted it to look like this, and you can refer back to what you learned through conversation mapping or content mapping, and it helps you create a really strong content strategy going into these meetings where you need to get sign off from stakeholders. And developing a strong content strategy is really important so that when you go into these meetings and you're collaborating with stakeholders, you have a strong sense of where you're talking from and what's going to be the best user experience from a content point of view so that you can really advocate for content and give content a voice. Any questions so far? Experiences?
I just want to chime in and say that going back a slide, that's one of my favorite things to do is part of content strategy is really advocating for that user and then also communicating to various stakeholders, be it product, marketing, designers, dev, whoever, the value behind the words. Like they're not there for personal reasons or to look pretty, but rather there's a pure vision and rationale behind it. It really creates a true sense of point of view and ultimately gives additional credence once you do those different layers of testing.
That's awesome. And you do user testing on your content at CVS, don't you, Jen?
Oh man, I love it. I do it like day in, day out. I know. I do everything from like, and you know, I make a point that other people on the team do it too. Everything from, you know, like you said, guerrilla testing, but also doing more stringent testing on usertesting.com, looking for ways that we can test not only content, but design, usability, getting a sense from accessibility, all these different viewpoints to weigh in to ultimately cater for the best user experience.
So that's interesting. So when you use the user research and all these other point of views, does it help? Is it effective in helping you uncover like pain points or places where you can improve what's on the page?
100%. 100%. I mean, it ultimately removes the blinders from other people that you're working with, other stakeholders that may not know that you've put certain words in a certain pattern, or we don't want to have a user skip a part of the journey because ultimately we need to put ourselves in the position of the user's mindset. And sometimes that is an established mindset, in terms of e-commerce, but maybe this is an entirely new content program that's going to require a true onboarding experience. And how do you, at the end of the day, shape that experience with the company's brand voice and style and tone, and how do you honor that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's some of these guerrilla tests that I showed, you can do them formally, you can do them informally and we did some of the informal ones at work. Didn't we do one of your pages, Jen?
We did one of my pages just in regards to a new delivery and fulfillment method that we were enrolling. And it happened to be that the guerrilla tactic that we chose actually fit in line with a existing persona of a shopaholic and someone that's wanting to find the best possible
I remember
deals.
that. That was our super
Yeah.
shopper.
That was our super shopper, which was one of the top 5 personas that we have grounded within the CVS experience, and how do we cater to that end user.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing all that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Sarah, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I could see the argument that to do this guerrilla testing beats none at all, where you're just kind of on your own personal assumptions. But what do you do? I'll just use an extreme example here. Let's say you're working on the Domino's pizza app and you just don't have any coworkers who are 17-year-old males.
Right.
So how do you
Guerrilla test it?
Well, how do you apply a level of caution to what you're getting from your colleagues, since they are fairly far removed from the user persona?
Right. That's a really interesting question. And I think because my experiences have been with people who sort of fit the persona in different ways, I think when you have a persona group that is 17-year-old men or 13-year-old girls or whatever that is, then I think you need to get formal, unless you have people like that in your life, like your kids' friends. But I do think you need to adhere, not stringently, but somewhat, to a persona type that you're after. That's a great point. You guys are giving me such good ideas for fleshing out the content in my content presentation.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I actually had another question
Sure.
for everybody. When you showed that, what you call a sketch, which looks, it's like moving into the direction of high fidelity.
Yes, it's low fidelity,
And
but
like
yeah.
every word, there was, every field had words in it. And I'm just curious to know from the rest of you that are working in this field, is that typical? Do you, I'd love if you just put in the chat, like, yes, that's what we do, or no, we don't have that much content in our mocks. I thought it struck me as like being more than usual, but love to know what everybody else says. And we'll see what they say. Back to you.
Did anybody put anything in the chat?
We have a yes. Oh, well, they're coming in too rapidly here. So we'll come back to this.
Interesting.
Yeah, right on. You should read Christine Harris's comment, because I think that's kind of your whole point. Content is often an afterthought, annoying, and then
it is annoying,
and then expected to be shoehorned in. That's kind of the whole point, isn't it?
That's completely the whole point. And one of the struggles we have, and we've had this everywhere I go, is to get content involved early enough in the process. Like, we're so often brought in late. And the idea is to get in right before and right when everything gets going, like right when the ball gets kicked. We want to be there. And the more that we advocate for content using these sound content strategies, the more likely we are to be included from the beginning. So the more value we bring. And we're always looking for ways to bring more value and create a solid point of view so that we get invited in early and that people learn to understand what we're doing. Because everywhere we go, we're giving content a voice. We want to be a strong voice, loud and proud. The last few slides are just a few resources. I put some books here. I'll give you guys a minute to write them down if you want to. These are sort of some of this one in the lower right-hand corner is Writing is Designing, and perhaps you've seen all of these. And give it a minute for you to write some things down.
Any book you'd recommend a beginner begin with, Sarah?
Well, if you're a beginner, you have to read Content Strategy for the Web, as it's like the seminal book on content strategy, and Strategic Writing for UX is really, really good. Like hands-on, here's what we're doing books. But all of these books were books I read in the beginning, except Writing is Designing, that's newer, that helped me a lot. And then I have more books because I love books. If you're interested in audits and inventories, Paula Land's book is really good. Enterprise Content Strategy by Kevin Nichols is great. The User Experience Team of One is really interesting because that covers a lot of user research methodologies you can do on your own. So I try to include a range of resources that I've found useful. And then podcasts I love. I live in the middle of nowhere, so I'm often driving. And Content Strategy Insights I love.
Wait a minute. The host is in the room.
Speak up.
Larry,
It's such
other
a
Larry.
quiet
Thanks,
group tonight.
thanks, Sarah. But those other podcasts are all great too. I listen to them more than I listen to mine. So
Oh, that's awesome. No, I love all of them. They're really good, and all have really different angles and different things to offer, so it's worth exploring. And if you all have questions and you're just too shy to ask, that's totally fine. You can email me or find me on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to answer questions, to connect. Yeah, I would love to hear anything you thought, anything I could improve in the presentation or you wished had been included, any questions you had. I'm open to any and all feedback and requests for information. So please feel free to reach out.
And I'll just mention before you ask your questions, I started the recording late, forgive me.
That's okay.
But I'll send out a link to the recording to all of you, as well as the transcript of the chat, so you can pick up these book titles in there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So chat away, ask away.
I want to see the chat. Oh yeah, how to make sense of any mess. That's a good one.
I have a question, Sarah.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation, first and foremost. A lot of really inspirational things to think about in all of our projects. One thing that I see over and over again is leadership being distracted by words on a page. When you're trying to get initial sign off on direction, like should this page exist? And so adding those additional words can sometimes be super distracting. So how do you pick at what point in the process you start adding actual words versus like when you're talking about like trying to get sign off on the flow and maybe like that conversation that you're having about overall what they'll get from this page versus like the specific words? Because I've gone in meetings where it's like, it's a wireframe, you put in words and you spend the whole hour talking about if the verb should be at the beginning or at the end. And then you walk away and realize you didn't never decided if you need the page at all. So could you talk about how to like direct the conversation in the right way?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think the words need to be right in there, like just like wireframes are a first draft in FPO, the words are too, and that needs to be set up. Like there's language on the page to help us direct what we're doing. This is not the final language, it's more here. So my idea would be in a wireframe review to have the content and explain, like, we collaborated to get this, and the designs are as content dependent as they are UX dependent. And find a way to include those conversations so it's not just a wireframe review. It's a first draft UX review with first draft content, so that the concept of the page doesn't just include user actions, it includes the language, the conversation that we're having with the user. And to me, the UX is an extension of the conversation we're having with the user. That was a great question. I saw someone here on the note of content as an afterthought. How do you deal with product designers' resistance to involve content designers from day one?
It was me, Sarah. Thank you.
That's a really good question. So like to my point earlier, like consistently having a strong content strategy rationale will help the product designers and product owners and all these people, even your UX lead, see what you bring to the table. And the more they see what you bring to the table, the more you're going to be included. And I don't know if anybody else has found that to be true, but it's definitely how we're moving at CVS, is to train the team to build a strong content strategy rationale based on all these fundamentals, so that they are constantly giving content strategy a voice. And the more we do that from the initial planning stages to the final delivery, the more our value is seen and the more we're going to be brought in. We don't even have to say we're doing content first design, we just do it. But if you can explain the process to them, all the better. Anybody else? I'm looking through the. I like somebody said, Ursula, have a great relationship with your UX designer, so you collaborate from day one, but it took years for that to happen. But it's glorious when it does. And that's true. I do think it's work to get people on board. I mean, we've had that experience, certainly. I'm reading these content prior to the server. I noticed those. Yeah. Content is at the forefront for my team, and we have monthly think tanks to generate content. That is awesome. And then here's, like we were saying earlier, UX goes its own way and hands it off to me after the stakeholders already approved the design. We don't want that to happen. But some places it's so built into the culture, like trying to break through that is really hard. And the more substantial rationale you can have, I hope that people will listen. Hopefully.
Well, maybe last call for questions.
Last call.
Last call. There being no further questions, I would love to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and a giant Zoom round of applause for Sarah for spending her.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
The Zoom rounds of applause are about the most lackluster things, I think, on the face of earth. But they're heartfelt.
No, it's very nice. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. It's been really nice. And do reach out to me if you'd like. I'm here. Always ready to talk content. Larry, thank you again for
Oh,
inviting
Sarah,
me.
thank you so much. Pleasure
Sure.
to get to know you.
You
All right,
too.
everybody, have a wonderful evening and rest of your week, and stay healthy. That's the main thing. And we hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah, good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
The diehards remain.
Well, it's the diehards or the people who went off to the kitchen.
Larry, Jen Kellerman here is a friend of mine at work.
Hi, Jen.
Awesome content strategist.
Thank
Very
you.
nice to meet you, Larry.
Thank you for
Larry
being
and Larry,
an active participant.
the other Larry.
Yeah, I should
Larry.
bail so there's no confusion. But I wanted to thank you, Sarah. That was great.
Sure, yeah, thank you for coming.
See y'all soon.
Bye, Larry.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
All right. Any thoughts or suggestions?
Oh, I thought I learned a lot about what I can include in my basic presentation. You know, there's obviously a ton more to talk about in the longer thing, but just to clarify, some of those questions were really good. You know, about the personas and about you know, to put in some of the benefits of content first design, or getting the rationale and getting the giving power to your voice to get in early on projects.
Mhm.
So that was
You
interesting
know,
for me.
something we probably should have talked about, now that I think about it, is how do you advocate for this practice in these entrenched organizations that treat the words as the afterthought?
It's a renegade process, Larry.
I think you could have an entire event just about that, about
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
advocate. You know what I mean? Like, here's the
Yeah.
5 different ways to excel at it,
I think
and
that,
give clear-cut examples.
Well, that's
yeah, I
kind
think
I
of,
would go to that.
that would be a great panel
It would.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could all ask each other questions and get people from different companies.
Mhm.
Okay, mark your
Yeah.
calendars. We're having you
All
back.
right.
Okay, that'd be fun. Marsha Volpe, we got to get her in there because she's having a terrible time. And it would be interesting to include someone who really needs help doing it.
Christine Harris was the one who mentioned that.
Oh, Christine. Oh, Larry, I forgot to tell you, and you know, I don't want to share the slides, but I do have an article about this on the Medium, and I can send you the link if people want that.
Really,
I
that's a
think
great idea.
that'd be helpful to people.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks, Jen, for sharing so much. That was really nice.
No, thank you for the invite. This was really
Yeah.
great, Sarah.
Jen,
Yeah.
are
All right, I'm
you,
gonna drop.
are you an East Coaster?
I am. I'm an East Coaster, so it's a little late
This
over
is
here.
late
or
night
at least
for
it
us.
feels late
Oh,
to me.
come
I
on.
know.
It's not even.
I
We just need a disco nap and then we're gonna go out and like do another presentation.
Are you in the Boston area?
am. Yep. I'm right in the heart of Boston.
Nice.
She doesn't mess around.
Well,
I don't. No,
I couldn't either. You don't have to have a car, do you?
I do not. No.
There you go.
I mean,
That-
especially with tomorrow and the upcoming winter storm, like I'm in no mood to potentially have to shovel that out. I don't know about you, Michaela.
I don't even know if we're getting snow.
Michaela's from Chicago. She's used to shoveling.
She lives in the snow. Do you just like stay inside all winter?
No. You gotta dig your way out.
Oh, man.
Are you, I mean, it's only January, but are you ready to compare a Seattle winter to a Chicago winter?
Right? Yeah. Yes, I think I am already.
Okay, then what's your verdict?
Chicago's got it. Well, I don't have one, I guess. It's like, it feels like it's a lot worse in Chicago, but you guys with your hills, you guys
Not
have
my
a
hills.
half-inch of snow. It's like
Yeah.
nobody leaves their house. So, well,
Oh my
hills,
God.
mountains, yeah, everything.
I am putting the link to the article in the chat, Larry.
Oh, great idea. Okay,
So
thank
that'll
you.
help people, and you can give them my email if they want to reach out. I'm all open to that.
Will do. All right.
Okay.
Again,
Thanks,
thank you
everybody.
so much, Sarah.
Yeah, have a great night.
Bye, good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.